No, my apologies. As I started saying it, I was like, I'm going to edit. I probably shouldn't be saying this.
All these like creators that like you want me to be on the same plane as them and
Right.
like
I would have done
speak with the same
a double
authority.
take, Me?
Exactly.
Me?
Yeah, but truly, and like so like that was a moment for me where I was like, "Oh, I'm actually this isn't a like I want to be this. I'm doing it." And I think that's, we all set these goals of like, oh, I want to write Batman, and that's when it's gonna be real, and that's when when I get to write Batman, or when I get to write Spider-Man, or whatever, and that's such a niche pinpoint to hit
Right.
that I feel it's really important for us as creators to take a moment to sit and like really look at all the things that we've accomplished so far and like holy shit, that's impressive. To create something from nothing and to put it out there, like that's huge. It doesn't matter if it's Batman or not, like that's insane.
So I was perusing the internet, and we talked about it on email quickly. But I found your 2015 Tumblr post. I think it was a 5-part series, yeah, again from 2015, titled "Everything You Need to Know About Editors," which I highly recommend. I thought it still held up pretty damn well for being so long ago, and I think you were relatively newer to the editing side of things around then. Can you walk us through, and I don't know if your ideas have shifted since then, but the 4 stages, how you outlined it back then, of the editor's role?
Sure, yeah, and I want to preface that when I wrote this, this was um, back when I wasn't as experienced in comics editing. So this article in and of itself is more geared towards just like writing point blank. It doesn't really go into the extra steps that is comics editing, because there's a lot more involved. But yeah, there's four basic stages of editing when you're editing any form of writing, and that is developmental editing, line editing, copy editing, and proofreading. um, and sometimes an editor, you can hire a freelance editor to do just one of them. Sometimes it's an editor will kind of do an all hands, cover all the bases type of thing. It just depends on the working relationship, the publisher you're working with, et cetera, et cetera. But developmental editing is probably what most editors think of when they think of editing. That's where I'll get in the weeds with you and like really ask like, well, what is Billy's motivation here? Why, and really get into the who, what's, where, when's, and whys of the story, the plot.
Right. Help keep things on
Um,
track, right?
exactly, or just make it make sense.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I read. My editorial philosophy tends to be asking a lot of questions, where really at the end of the day, I don't care what a writer's reasoning is for why a character is doing something, just so long as there is a justification. Just making sure the writer can justify the choices and their intention, because sometimes you read something and it's like, well, why is this happening, and it becomes clear, oh, so the story can happen, like it's happening because reasons, right? And it's just as simple and plain as that, which doesn't really work narratively all the time. um, and then there is line editing, and that's can happen at the same time depending on where in developmental you are. But that's, say I get a script or a manuscript, and that's when I'm going in and reading and making sure it's consistent, making sure it narratively still makes sense at that stage. And from there, we do copy editing, um, which is what probably most people think of when they think of editing. And that's where it is line by line, making sure it's smooth, it's pretty, your syntax is there, your grammar's correct. And then, of course, last step is proofreading, which is what I think the general public thinks of when they think of what an editor does. I think that 9 times out of 10, when people ask me, like, or want to complain about editing, they're talking about like proofreading things. Um, which I love my proofreaders. I love my copy editors to death. I think they're amazing and super underrated. And I can't imagine like literally your job is just all day, just like marking commas like that. Like sounds like a nightmare to me, but like I love and I'm super grateful for the people who do it. But like I think a lot of times like fans don't know, and even writers don't know that's a completely different person that's doing that stuff, that's trained specifically in that.
Right. It can be a different person, right?
Yeah.
It's been several years now. I've been using the same editor, and he does my lettering too. Shout out to Chaz Pangburn. But I learned so much from bringing him on, and a lot of it was like you said. He helped me. He helped ask the right questions to prod me to think deeper about why I'm going down a certain avenue or why the character made a certain choice. Bringing on an editor for me helped take me to my writing to the next level. I definitely noticed it, and I definitely highly recommend any new writers, if you can bring an editor on, then I definitely do it. Definitely do it.
Yeah, I definitely, support that too. I think though a lot of times, and I'm sure you've experienced and seen it, and we've all been there, we've all started where, we're very insecure about our work and we don't want to bring on an editor because we're not ready for anyone to tell us that
Right.
there's anything quote unquote wrong with it. um our babies are precious to us, and I think if you are going to be a professional in this industry in any way shape or form, like you gotta let go of that
Mm-hmm.
so
A
fast.
100%. Yeah, you got to lose that ego pretty quickly. I mean, making comics is a collaboration as it is. So even if an artist wants to change something in the script, my motto, and I think it's a lot of people's motto, but it should be story first, right? The
Mm-hmm.
story and the outcome, that's the final product. That's the baby that comes out at the end. So if it's going to make the story better, bring someone on who's going to chop it to pieces and critique it and make you and force you to make it better. It's just ironing down that sword until it becomes a fine weapon. So do you what are the biggest mistakes, the biggest reoccurring mistakes that you might see writers make?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna gear towards like less experienced writers, newer
Totally.
writers. I think one of the biggest things is that their first project is their like opus. A lot of writers want like, oh my god, my first thing is gonna be my Beowulf, right?
Right.
Like my
It's epic.
my yeah, this like 60 issue, 100 issue. It's gonna go on forever. The story I've been dreaming of my entire life, and like I mean, you don't run a marathon before you've ran around the block, right? And that's essentially what it is. You gotta build up the endurance and the skill set in order to do something like that. Um, for sure, I think that's a really big one. And then another one I see a lot. Uh, Even with indie writers who have a little bit more experience under the belt is when they're doing a series or a mini series, and I have my issue one and I'm so excited about my issue one, and my let's say my high concept is um uh the main character is getting framed for murdering his grandma, right? And we're gonna sell this book as Billy Bob whatever is murdering his rich heiress grandma, and he's framed for it, and he has to get away. That can't be the last scene of your first issue. You don't want the cliffhanger to be your marketing point for a book, because otherwise it's just like it's kind of lackluster. Like it's like, oh, I ordered a cake, right? And then you get a cake but there's no frosting or sprinkles on it, and like you can't complain because you did get what you ordered, but there's nothing there leaving you wanting to come back. There's nothing enticing you to come on. You have to include something that a reader didn't expect, that a reader doesn't want, something to bring them back to issue two, because picking up an issue one is so easy. Everyone's going to pick up an issue one on speculation. Let me just give it a shot. Um, and you got to have that moment of like, oh, I didn't expect that.
Mm.
Oh, that's fun. Oh, that's interesting. Oh, that's a character we didn't know was involved. Some reveal, some twist, some whatever. So I always say, like, whatever your high concept is, if it's a 20-page issue, your high concept, your that climax has to like appear on page like 16, 17. That way you can have some addendum, some additional, either B plot or plot twists that we didn't see coming, re-listen to issue two.
Mm.
Um, and like, there's nothing wrong with giving them exactly what you said you were going to give them, right? There's nothing wrong with that. But the stories that stick with us, the stories that are most exciting that we want to come back for, are the stories that always give us something that we didn't expect.
Right, right, right. So it kind of gives you a little jab halfway through issue one, and then towards the end of the issue, that curveball comes in, and the right hook comes, and you're like, oh shit, this is what it's really about, or this is what I'm gonna. These are the twists and turns, or the story that I can expect from pick the story as a whole, the later issues.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other general tips? I mean, I guess that was a little bit of both of the mistakes for the mistakes or suggestions for artists. So that would lead me into the writer. I mean, excuse me. That would lead me to any other tips for aspiring writers or even editors.
Yeah, I think, it's just getting out there and doing it. I can't tell you how many people who are like, oh, I have this really good idea, or, I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
write this thing. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. I want to do it. And especially for writers, like, there is nothing in your way that's stopping you from, like, writing anything. Like, even if we all have like a cell phone, right? Like, worst case scenario, you have your notes app. There is nothing stopping you from writing except you. And the hardest the hardest step of any project is putting the first like word on the page, putting, even for an artist, right? It's that first line, like, just scribble something just to get it out there, because then once you're kind of moving, it'll happen. um
Just
and
start.
then, yeah, just
Yeah.
start, like, truly, like, it's the hardest part 9 times out of 10, but like, it's the most important step. And then also, and this goes with artists as well, like, finished not perfect. There's
Mm-hmm.
that saying, like, 10,000 hours
Mm-hmm.
before you become an expert. So for a writer, who knows, it's 10,000 pages. um
It's a
but
lot of pages, and you're not going to hit them if you're not, if you're standing there afraid to make that leap. You're going to
yeah.
write crappy stuff in the beginning,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I think it's like, you have to get over real fast. Like, yeah, you probably suck when
Right,
you start.
right.
Like, you
For a
probably
while,
suck.
yeah, for a while.
But then you have nowhere else to go but up, which is great.
That's it. Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but
That's
you
what I told
just,
myself a while back. Do it for 10 years. I think early on I was inspired. I would listen to different podcasts when comedians would talk about, they don't get good until about year 10. And I just took that really to heart, and just said, you know what? This is going to be my master's degree. It's going to take 10 years to get there and be good. But, if I don't start today, then I'm just not going to get there. Get
yeah,
that crap
no,
done, get the shitty work done on paper, make the mistakes, learn from them, rinse and repeat, on to the next one.
exactly. And like, I think too, it's finding your community of support, because being a creator can be such an isolating experience. And we're all there's no critic quite like our inner critic, that's super
Mm-hmm.
harsh and is like, yeah, your stuff probably sucks, but your inner critic is gonna like really tell you that you suck. And like, so being able to find a network of other creators and within like kind of your same experience level, so you can all kind of like hype each other up and support each other and give feedback on each other's work. And I think that's so, so, so important. um because you're going to grow together, not only in your experience but also in your careers. A lot of times, the reason you see all of these creators on social media or at conventions, like, as friends, it's because they all came up together.
Right.
Um,
It's almost
you
like
know,
classes. Yeah, like you come up with the same
exactly.
class. Yeah, Chaz, who I mentioned before, he's now the senior editor at Mad Cave as of a couple months ago. And
Yeah.
we started making comics together 2016, 2015-ish area. But so that's 100% true. You find the folks in your lane, I guess, so to speak, and try to ride the waves together and come up with
Exactly.
each other. Yeah, that's awesome. They'll help keep you on track, keep you honest, let you know if your work sucks or what they think of it. Really, I mean, that's
Yeah.
sometimes that's what you need to hear is that hard truth. Yeah, that certainly has helped me out. How about for editors? So, if somebody is interested in becoming an editor, I mean, what do you recommend the first steps they take are?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different avenues. I definitely did not have a traditional path to comics editing. 9 times out of 10, most people get an internship at a publisher, and that's how they get, their foot in the door and meet people and all of that. I started via the self publishing route, and I very much knew that like creators, especially at my level, being in my young 20s at the time, they're not going to be going out and looking for an editor. Kind of at that point of like, well, I don't need one.
Mm-hmm.
All I do is proofreading. I don't need one.
I would
Um,
need one just for proofreading.
there are plenty who do.
I know. Yeah.
Uh, there are plenty who do. But I very much kind of went the route of like the creators that I knew, like writers just want to write, artists just want to draw. No one actually wants to make the thing. No one actually wants to like do the work of finding other collaborators. We all just want to sit in our caves and be an artist, right? Like that's kind of what I was noticing. And so for me, I was like, great. So I'm going to create my own project to edit, um, where all a writer has to do is write, all an artist has to do is draw. They don't have to find each other. I'll put them all together. I'll do the project management. Basically, I wanted to create my own portfolio piece.
Mm.
And that's what I recommend to a bunch of other young creators who want to become editors is, create your own projects to edit. Do an anthology, start a zine, like really make the projects that you want out there. And especially now where like web comics are huge, and all you need is like a Tumblr to or an Instagram to post a project. Like you don't have to go through the hoops of like printing or getting it in front of an audience. It's easier than ever to create comics and meet other creators and put projects together. And so kind of just like being an artist or writing for an editor, it's start making projects, start doing it.
That's awesome. That's funny too, because that's kind of what I did, and I think people have recommended it, obviously, and I definitely recommend it too. On the writing side, get things finished, like you said before, finished, not perfect, and try and work on smaller, short projects and build a portfolio that way. I mean, my first several projects that I actually finished were probably a handful of, and I gave myself, tell a story in 4 pages, tell it in 8 pages, 10 pages, and I have a collection. I still have them up on my website with the dates on them, so you can see how I, progressed, and I can go back and look at it. But that's something I highly recommend too, and that helps you, like you said before, finish the project. B, it helps you learn to collaborate and find find the artist, the colorist, the letterer, get the thing done, the editor, and just see the whole process through. Get everybody paid, make sure it's all done right, start to promote it. It forces you to go through the motions, and that prepares you for when you're actually putting pitches together and getting series hopefully picked up. On the collaboration side, do you have any quick tips on being a good collaborator?
Don't be a dick, I think is
Number
like
one, that's a
kind
no.
of encompasses everything.
Totally.
I mean, yeah, like there's a lot of different versions of collaborators out there. Unfortunately, it's a stereotype for a reason. There are some creators who, writers in particular, who will like kind of treat their artists like slave labor. Like, this is my vision and my, you're just here to draw it.
That goes back to the ego thing, right?
Exactly.
It's a collaboration, the betterment, whatever. The best idea for the story wins in the end.
Exactly. But unfortunately,
Right.
like, I'm just like, unless you're paying like an exorbitant page rate, right? Unless the money is worth it, like, and I'm guessing when you're starting out, it's not.
No.
But like, it's a team sport. That's how I like to think of comics. Like, it's a team sport. You have your offense, you have your defense, but one can't carry the game. um, you know, and you've got to work together in order to create the best project that there is. And when I speak with writers, who are afraid of letting go, and giving an artist freedom, I always say, like, you wanted to work with this artist for a reason. Like, there was a reason that this artist's work, their portfolio spoke to you, so you have to let them do what it is that they do. They can't do that if you're standing over them, you know, just kind of micromanaging. An artist needs to be able to do their work and work their process, and that includes making choices that weren't originally on the page. But that's some of the best moments that you'll get in comics, is an artist like seeing something differently. um
Yeah.
and I think that's what makes this craft like so unique versus other types of storytelling.
Yeah. Yeah, seeing a page come in where I might have written something to end the page, and then the artist kind of used that to start the next page, or just did something a little bit different, and you're like, oh, okay, this is better. This is a better execution, and they saw that while they were on the page, and it should be. I know you said, and I agree that it's not often the case, or many times it's not the case, especially for newer writers, but it shouldn't be an issue. I mean, it just
Yeah.
flat out shouldn't be an issue. So I think the more people say it, the more hopefully newer writers in particular will hear it and take that to heart.
Yeah, and then on top of that, like, and this goes for everyone on the team, making sure you're an active and proactive communicator is very important. Especially as you move up from indie to work for hire to, doing creator owned with a publisher. Um, we all understand shit happens, life happens, like, sometimes we're not going to hit our deadlines or whatever. Um, Most collaborators, your editors, publishers, are going to be understanding and will work with you if you let us know ahead of time, or
Right.
if you let us know, if you disappear for 3 weeks, and aren't responding to anything, and then you come back and be like, oh yeah, by the way, um so and so had a baby, and so I had to go help out, like, blah 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 blah, or whatever, car accident, whatever, sick, whatever, like, we can work with that 3 weeks ago if you told us. But if we're not finding out until after the fact, like, you're putting your collaborators in a really tough, and unfair position. And so, I always tell, creators when I work with, like, please, please, please reach out. I want to work with you and I want to help you, but I can't help you if I am left in the dark.
Yeah, there's a excuse me. There's a level of professionalism that's there when it comes to responsiveness, and jumping back and forth and talking to people. That's why I first noticed when you and I started talking via email. I mean, you respond. I thought I respond pretty quick. You respond very quick, which I thought, Jesus, that's you're on your game. You're obviously doing a whole bunch of different things. You're responding to me pretty damn quick. And I've had that same experience on the other end of the spectrum with artists who disappear. Back in the day, a few of them disappeared with the money. They took the money and ran, and I learned lessons the hard way. But yeah, responsiveness, be professional, talk, be open, be understanding, be all of those things in the collaboration.
And I think be self-aware, like, there are some creators that I work with that I know like suck at email, which is totally fair. Email sucks, and like I can only imagine. I was talking with one creator during the pandemic when her kids were doing school,
Mm.
via Zoom at home. Like the school is sending hundreds of emails a day, and so like I'm sure the last thing they want to do is look at their email and see if their editor is reaching out to them. And so if you're not good at email, or if that that's not the best way to communicate, but you're always on Facebook Messenger, or you will answer a text or a phone call or whatever, like let your other collaborators know. There are some creators I work with who, like, for whatever reason, Twitter DM, like, that is the
Hmm.
way they communicate. So that's how I communicate with them. Like, as an editor, for me, I see it as my job to figure out the methods in which I can get the best work out of the creators I'm working with. And so if that is communicating with you via smoke signal, I will figure it out. And so within reason, like, obviously,
Totally. Yeah.
but yeah, like, I think having that level of like self-aware, like, I need a phone call in order to motivate me. Great. Let's figure that out.
No, it's a great point because I've found myself. I have my phone on too much, and my alerts on all the time. So I could be on Gmail or email, Facebook Messenger, Instagram Messenger, and I'll talk to people on there and they'll respond. And then after a while, they're like, "Hey, can you email me? Because it's a lot easier." Like, oh, I didn't even think about it. Other people are better at distancing themselves from their phones than I am. So yeah, I think that's a good point, and I'm going to try and start to do that, asking folks ahead of time when we enter the collaboration, how do we want to communicate? What's the quickest and best way? Because I don't want to be on Facebook Messenger if you're not comfortable and you're not constantly on it. If email is the preferred way, let's go that route. That's a great point. Um, any advice? So at cons, I mean, you just mentioned you went back to your first convention in a long time, 2 years or 2 or 3 years. Do you have any bits of advice for writers or editors who want to approach the table for a publisher, maybe show them their portfolio, do the networking thing, give a business card, introduce themselves?
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of different avenues of which to approach this. I think every editor, every publisher is going to have their own personal preferences, so these are just mine. Um, I I think first and foremost, it's important to preface that if we're at a comic convention and you're a creator and I'm an editor or publisher, I know you want a job. Like, you don't need to tell me. We all know. Like, we're all there. We all want
Right.
work.
Let's
We all
cut the
want to make
shit.
comics. You know, and so I think there's that level of like, you know, you don't want to come across desperate, but you don't want to be too casual about.
Right.
I had a creator once like, oh yeah, deadlines are stupid. I don't believe in deadlines. And like, so for me, I'm just like, well, I'm never going to work with you. But he was clearly like looking for his next job while he was telling me he doesn't like deadlines. Um, Bizarre experience.
Not the best opening
Not
or lead in line, my
little too
friend.
casual.
Oh, that's ridiculous.
But yeah, I think if you can, if you're able to, if you have the avenues of which to do so, and you want to set up a meeting with an editor or meet up with an editor to talk about a particular project or pitch or something at a convention, email them, DM them, approach them before said convention in
Hmm.
order to do so. And an editor will let you know if they have time to do that at a convention or if there's a better way in order to have those conversations. Because just coming up to an editor at a convention being like, I want to pitch you a project, like they're probably not going to have time for that. And so if you want to drop off something for them to look at later, because that's what I tell writers, like, if you want to hand me a comic to look at and not a pitch,
You don't want the
but
box set. You don't want my indie box set. I'm sure you've gotten. I'm sure you've got stories.
yeah, there is a reason why if I go to a Comic Con, I do not bring a bag with me, because everyone will just hand me stuff, and like I will come back with a whole bookshelf worth of
I believe it.
things.
Right.
And so I don't bring a bag with me anymore for that reason. But yeah, like hey, I have this project. I just wanted to drop it off if if you would be interested in looking at it. And I think that's a big thing, is like asking for consent from an editor or a publisher. Like, hey, could I give this to you? Would you want to look at this? Do you mind if I, like, are you here this weekend? Do you mind if I come back later and show you my portfolio? Um, I think for me that goes a long way, rather than just like kind of cornering an editor and being like, here's all my work, hire me, which happens so much, uh, and like is really off-putting to me. And I think, yeah, like if I'm at a publisher's booth giving portfolio reviews, yes,
Mm.
come up and ask for a portfolio review. But if I'm walking Artist Alley and like clearly in a conversation with someone else, like kind of barging in that conversation and throwing your work in my face, like that's not going to leave a good impression. That's not going to make an editor want to hire you. Like first impressions of your professionalism, like that to me is speaking like what you were going to be like working on a project. And I, as an editor, have to vouch for you if I'm going to bring you aboard, and like you need to show that you're someone that I can stand by.
Yeah. Yeah. And it starts with that first impression. Did you have? I think the quote unquote breaking in moment is different. We each set our own bar for what that is. It could be finishing your first Kickstarter campaign. It could be a matter of things. Finishing your first story. That's the first level of breaking in or getting into being an established or creator. Did you have that? Did you have a specific moment that you felt I'm on the right path. I'm doing the right thing.
Um, yeah, I think it was. I mean, I have a very weird, quick rise into professional comics, and I'm very self-aware of that. But like I said before, I did this big I created my portfolio. I did this big anthology,
Mm-hmm. Was that
and
2014-ish? The crime,
yeah,
the
yeah,
crime
the crime
anthology.
anthology. I
Nice.
put together, yeah, so I decided I wanted to edit comics, and I had graduated college so at that time, so I couldn't get an internship anywhere, and I wasn't about to just like pick up and move to, New York on the hopes that maybe one day, right? Like I wasn't ready for that. So I was like, well, I will, let me create this anthology to see if I even can do this, and if I even want to do this, if I'm any good at it. And so I ended up putting together, it's called Unlawful Good, an anthology of crime. I will never come up with a better title for anything in my life. And it's 17 short 8-page stories, from like 50 creators from all over the world. And like, it just, like, looking back at it, I cannot believe that that was my first project, like how massive that
How
was.
many creators did you say?
Like 50, like close to
Ooh,
50.
yeah,
Um,
that's tough.
yeah, from like all over the world, different time
Yeah,
zones, like all of this stuff. I'm
yeah.
working full time, making this happen. But it honestly, like, it was doing that project and putting it on Kickstarter and like, oh shit, like it's getting funded. Oh, at the time it was one of the most successful comics Kickstarters. And I think the moment I like felt like, oh, maybe this is real, maybe I can do this, was New York Comic Con 2014. The Kickstarter was in its final week, and while I was there, I ran into a man named Craig Engler who worked for Kickstarter at the time, and he was hosting the Kickstarting Comics panel at New York Comic Con. And he was like, he recognized my project, and he was like, oh, well, we're doing this panel. Do you want to speak on it? Do you want to come on and speak on it? And like also on that panel was like Jimmy Palmiotti and Alex DeCampi and like Ryan Brown and like all these like creators that like I wanted to be like, I wanted to aspire to, I wanted, like that's what I want to do, and you want me to be like on the same plane as them and
Right.
like
I would have done
speak with the same
a
authority.
double take. Me?
Exactly.
Me?
Yeah, but truly, and like so like that was a moment for me where I was like, oh, I'm actually, this isn't a like I want to be this. I'm doing it. And I think that's, we all set these goals of like, oh, I want to write Batman, and that's when it's gonna be real, and that's when, when I get to write Batman, or when I get to write Spider-Man, or whatever. And that's such a niche pinpoint to hit
Right.
that I feel it's really important for us as creators to take a moment to sit and like really look at all the things that we've accomplished so far and like, holy shit, that's impressive. To create something from nothing and to put it out there, like, that's huge. It doesn't matter if it's Batman or not. Like, that's insane.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I told myself back in the day when I first started. Aside from it might take 10 years to get kind of good at this, was to, yeah, at the end of the day, 20, 30, 40 years from now, if I have a shelf of, half a dozen books, a minimum, you know, or maximum, I'd be happy. It'd be cool. I did it. I did the thing. I went after it, accomplished what I wanted to, and just set those shorter, more attainable goals, be real and realistic about it, but then always have, those higher goals, like the Batman thing could be the mecca, but you gotta, set more attainable things on the way. Get published by a small press publisher, kickstart your own project, do these things that are just rungs on the ladder that kind of get you going where you want to go. And then you're going to hit them. I have no doubt if you set these smaller goals for yourself, you're going to hit these. And that should be, at least for myself, I find that hopefully is going to be enough. But who knows? I'll always have that itch that I want, more and more, and get better and better and things like that. But I digress. What do you have? What's kind of your? Do you have? What's your next big goal? What's your next, aspiration? Could be creatively, personally.
Yeah, I hate this question. I feel like I get asked this all the time.
Really? Oh wow.
Yeah, I like, I, for me personally, I've had a sort of weird trajectory into comics. Like we mentioned, I decided in 2014 I want to be a comics editor, so I decided a 200-page anthology is my first project, and that went really well. So well that I got hired by Marvel to launch Star Wars. And so like it just I'm not blind to like the big attainable things I've reached so far in my career, and I've got to work on big franchises, I've got to work on creator owned, I've won the awards, I've done a little bit of everything. So I feel like there is this expectation externally of like, Heather Antos is going to do big things, and we want to see what big things she's going to do. And for me, I kind of just want to edit some comics and make really good comics. Like, I love what I do. I'm very fortunate to be able to do what I do with the creators that I get to do it with. And I can't imagine wanting anything else. So that's like kind of like my goal is to just keep doing good work. Like, that's kind of where I'm at.
That's
Which
perfect.
is
That's awesome.
boring.
No, not really. You're comfortable in that. You're comfy in that zone,
Yeah.
right? I mean, you're there. You want to soak that in and live that for a bit, and then
Yeah.
who knows? We'll come back to that question in a couple of
No,
years.
exactly. Like, that's the thing is like I've only been doing this for 8 years now. Like, it hasn't been that long, um, relatively speaking. And so for me, I'm just like, I just want to kind of like make some good comics before the next big step. I don't want
Right.
to have to take a big step every
No,
other
yeah, I hear
year.
you. I hear you. Oh, it makes sense. I get it. It makes sense. Yeah, yeah. You got to smell the flowers sometimes,
Exactly.
right?
That's exactly it. Yep.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Heather Antos, I appreciate your time. Where can folks find you?
Yeah, so the best place to find me is probably my Twitter, which is at Heather Antos, just my name, nothing very exciting. And I also am on Instagram at Heather Artos, ART instead of ANT, where I post some drawings from time to time.